What's good, people? Let's talk about bond. No, not that kind of bond. I mean Trump's appeal bond. Oh, you thought just because I'm wearing and... never mind. Let's just get to it. What's good, people? Well, another big week for the Teflon Don, Donald Trump. After receiving the worst beating he's ever taken in a courtroom, where he was hit with a $355 million verdict for inflating the value of his real estate and his assets, as you can imagine, Donald Trump filed an appeal. Now, things went sideways because he's required to post a $454 million bond in order to file the appeal. If he's not able to do so, then the New York Attorney General has the right to go after his assets. His precious golf course, his Trump Tower, all up for grabs. Let's talk about appeal bonds. An appeal bond is a guarantee or a bond that a person must post with the court when filing an appeal from a judgment. Normally, that appeal bond also includes interest and the cost of attorney's fees for the person that must defend the judgment. One of the purposes of the appeal bond is to make sure that if the person who files the appeal loses, then the person that won a trial has to guarantee that the judgment will be paid. Two of the additional goals of appeal bonds is to, number one, limit the use of frivolous appeals, which are used solely as a delay tactic to avoid paying the judgment, and number two, using the appellate process to abuse and cause financial harm on the party that won a trial by making them wait for their money unnecessarily and to spend more money in excessive attorney's fees. Imagine being involved in a lawsuit, and for years you're waiting to get to court, you're spending money on legal fees, and you finally get your day in court, and when you do, you win, and the jury gives you a big award of several million dollars. However, instead of collecting your money, the defendant files an appeal, requiring you to wait several more years to collect the dime. So now, instead of paying you the money, the person you sued files an appeal, which is their right. However, they know they have no real chance of winning on the appeal. They're only doing it to, number one, delay the case and delay paying your money. Number two, be vindictive and make you spend more money on legal fees than necessary. Or three, try to starve you out and maybe get you to settle for less money than you won at trial. And that's why courts require appeal bonds, to make sure if that person appealing the judgment loses, then the person that won a trial has some guarantee that the judgment will be paid if they win the appeal. Now, in order to get an appeal bond, it's necessary to get an insurance company that agrees to cover the full amount of the judgment, plus any interest, plus any attorney's fees that will be necessary to pay the judgment if you lose the appeal. That's called a guarantee or a bond. Now, if you lose the appeal and you cannot afford to pay the judgment, then the insurance company is on the hook for the total amount. That's why they require assets in order to write the bond. They want to make sure you have real estate, cash, investments, anything of value they can take and use to pay the judgment if they're on the hook. Now, in Donald Trump's case, they would not take his real estate. You can imagine why. The guy gets, sued for inflating the value of his real estate. They're not going to take that as collateral. They wanted liquid assets. They wanted cash. Well, despite his wealth, Donald Trump was unable to get any insurance company to guarantee the bond. Also, he didn't have $450 million in cash on hand he could post himself. So, with his golf course and Trump Tower in the crosshairs of the Attorney General, at the very last minute, an appellate court threw Trump a lifeline and agreed to reduce the appeal bond to $175 million, which is an amount he indicates he can post. However, I gotta call it like I see it. I believe the appellate courts dropped the ball on this one. To reduce the amount of the bond to 1/2 of the amount of the verdict undercuts the fundamental principle of an appeal bond. The problem with reducing an appeal bond to half the amount of the judgment, now the person who received the judgment has very little protection. The defendant, in this case Trump, or anyone else that's on the receiving end of a big judgment, they can take action to hide their assets. They can sell property, they can transfer property out of their name, they can put the property in a trust that they still have control over. There are numerous things they can do to protect property and their assets from a judgment. And to be clear, I'm not saying Donald Trump would do that. However, the fact that the entire appeal bond is not in place to cover the full amount of the verdict means the judgment is not protected. I don't agree with that. I don't think that's a good idea. However, do me a favor, post your comments, call it like you see it, and tell me what you think. That's it. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. There are so many topics to talk about. I appreciate you taking the time to join me on this legal deep dive, but please subscribe, leave me your comments, and tell me the legal issues you want to talk about. You can find me on YouTube, social media, and your favorite podcast platform. Until then, that's it.